Hi everyone, thanks for joining us on Facebook Live. I am Jessie Chen, the creator of the Immigrants Career Growth Facebook page. Today we have Paulo Arantes. He is a data scientist based in San Francisco, California. Hi Paulo, thanks for
Hey,
joining.
Jess. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here and have the opportunity to share my story. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we are very much looking forward to hearing your stories as an immigrant working as a data scientist in the US. To kick off, how about you do a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. So, hi everybody. My name is Paulo. I currently live in San Francisco, California, but I'm originally from Brazil, a city called Belo Horizonte with about 3 million people, and I've lived there my whole life until I was 21 or 22. For context, my business is in background. I've studied business administration in college, and I've spent the first years of my career just working with that, helping a lot of entrepreneurs and being on the startup side of things. And I was living in Brazil with my fiance, which is now my wife, in Belo Horizonte for about 2 years. And then we decided to move back to California to be close to her parents. We did not want to go to Los Angeles because we didn't like traffic, like being in cars and everything, and we decided to go to San Francisco. I think a few of the original choices was first, uh, everything was happening in the entrepreneurship side here. So all the acquisitions are happening, all the technology news that get to Brazil, and it's such an aspirational thing happening here. And I wanted to be close to that to learn more how to become a better entrepreneur, which was my aspiration at the time. And yeah, we decided to move here. We both had no jobs to start with. We had no idea where we would live. So we came to visit the city for about a week and decided that we liked. So we decided to give it a try. So started applying for jobs and everything. And when I first moved here, I actually continued work for the Brazilian company that I was working before and came here with the goal of opening that company here, which was very challenging. I had to work like alone at home. And anyways, it didn't work out after 10 months. And I decided to go back to another startup, found a job, and stayed there for 4.5 months before I ran out of cash. So it was very San Francisco, very startup life, and yeah, that was a really cool introduction to the city.
Wow, I didn't know about the stories at all. Very interesting. Wonderful. Can you talk a little bit more about how you got into the field? Did you always know that you want to be a data scientist?
Yeah, I did not. So first, what I discovered when I was working here in San Francisco is that across my whole life working on the business side, I was using a lot of data the whole time. I'm very analytical, so I like to take my decisions based on the data that I'm seeing. But I would always be reliant on other teams. I would need to ask for data and ask for how to get the data so I could look at it. And my tool set was very limited. I would only use Excel. I was like really good at Excel, but that's it. Which, if you know, if you go like above 1 million rows on Excel, it freezes. So it's not very good for data science. And anyways, I wanted to get my hands dirty and learn the skills on how to gather this data by myself, but I had no idea how to do it or if I needed to be a data scientist to do it. And honestly, like when I was growing up until college, I wanted to be a doctor. I was fascinated to be like a
Doctor.
plastic surgeon because you can like increase people's how they feel better about themselves if you change their face or whatever. It was my hypothesis. And then as I was working in Brazil, I became really close to the entrepreneurship side. So I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to open my own company and grow it and scale and provide jobs because I believe that entrepreneurs are like a great force to uh, increase like a country's well-being and development in general. But finally, because I wanted to get my hands dirty, I decided that I want to be a data scientist. So my hypothesis was if I want to become a data scientist, how do I do it? And I always learn a lot about this culture of mentorship that if you have some challenges, you can talk to people who've been through these challenges before, which means that you can
Mm,
shorten your learning cycle. And I applied this exactly to this dilemma of becoming a data scientist or not. So I found people on LinkedIn that were actually data scientists right now. And I started shooting messages, trying to get introductions to them, and I wanted to learn how they got there, what is the job like, what is like their actual routine like, because I think it's
right.
different from the news and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So after talking to all these people and interviewing them, I decided that for me personally, I needed to go fast and get to validate if I like that or not. So I decided to learn Python by myself and to join a boot camp. And I chose
Mm,
Galvanize at the time because just wanted to like try the career if I liked. So I didn't need to spend my whole life to like dedicating on a PhD track, for example, which is how a lot of people become data scientists.
Wow, very cool. I really admire your drive just for wanting to become a data scientist. Then you went through all the journey to find your mentors, which is something you can probably share more insight about when you give advice to fellow immigrants in a little bit. So I know at some point your title was changed from being a machine learning engineer to data scientist. Can you briefly talk about the difference between machine learning engineer and a data scientist?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a roller coaster. I started thinking that I was a data scientist, and then I became a machine learning engineer, and now I'm back a data scientist. But I feel like all of these positions and their titles is a spectrum. Data science itself is a fairly new field, so people's background vary a lot, and it's not very well defined that this is black and white data science, this is black and white machine learning. So I think the machine learning engineer, he tends to be more focused on bridging all this research and implementation with more like engineering skills, because you're trying to put these systems in production and running live with real customers. So there's a lot of making sure it works and it's reliable. Data science, in theory, tends to be more focused on the research and iterating on your hypothesis to get better outcomes and continue research. But again, what a data science is varies a lot from company to company. I do like the sweet spot that involves a little bit of both, which is you get research and you also collaborate with product teams and owning up the end-to-end solutions to make everything available for the people. Uh, but again, I think startup life versus big company life, it's very different. In my experiences as a startup that I was talking about, it requires wearing many hats. And I have a cool story that in my previous job, one of the things that I worked on was creating a live demo in a conference, like a big trade show. And it was to implement our technology for authenticating people into an ATM. So we actually wanted people to walk to an ATM and withdraw money without a card and without a password. And I had to implement that, which had a lot of machine learning stuff, a lot of deep research, like we're working with PhD students and everything. But it also required literally buying an ATM, stripping it down, and integrating, which is like, it's not part of the description of neither machine learning or data science. But
You
yeah,
guys actually
I think
bought an ATM?
yeah, we bought an ATM from a vendor. And the funny thing is we had to carry the ATM to the trade show at the Moscone Center. And we were actually with a dolly in the streets lugging this ATM, and people thought we were robbing. Everything was legit though. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that sounds so fun. Yeah, I didn't know the like all the fun things you guys are doing as a data scientist. To me, data scientist is something super technical and involves a lot of math, and I'm not a math person, so usually I think that's a little bit of not as creative, but I could totally be wrong. So my next question is, before you became a data scientist at your current company, what are some of the struggles you went through before you found the job that you wanted in the US?
ooh, that's a great question. It's actually my favorite question
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like every person must go through this, regardless if you're an immigrant or not, every time they decided to change careers.
Mm-hmm.
But let's
Right.
go back to the beginning. Like when I first started in San Francisco, I was on the business side with this Brazilian startup. So I think the first challenge is just feeling small. Uh, it's hard to say this, but I was feeling like I was just a Brazilian here in Silicon Valley. And it's very overwhelming that you're just like a Brazilian company. Regardless, at the time, the company that I was representing here, we had like the largest telecom company in Brazil, the largest bank as a customer. But if you say that to somebody here, they can't grasp how big Brazil is to know how big the biggest telecom there is. So I think it's really hard to communicate. So first, there's this whole identity struggle, especially when you're transitioning careers. I feel literally like I had a mentor who gave me this metaphor. It's like a trapeze artist when you're in between jumping from one trapeze to the other, and you don't know, you're not associated with the old trapeze, which was my business identity, and I'm still not associated with my data scientist identity. And the only thing that keeps you afloat is knowing that there might be a safety net below you in the trapeze example. But yeah, it's like a lot of identity. So after the boot camp, for example, I thought that I wanted to bring together my business background and being a data scientist, so that was my biggest competitive advantage. But it's really hard to first believe that you are a data scientist after a 4 months boot camp. So it's always empty, and I think you get a lot of rejection, and you just got to plow through all this rejection until you get enough experience to prove that you have the experience that you're claiming that you have. So right off the boot camp, I applied to 186 jobs, and I know the count exactly because I was very diligent about tracking like my applications and everything. And all of those 186 applications with customized cover letters, getting introductions as much as possible, landed me one offer for a traineeship. It wasn't even full time. And I was super like disappointed at the time, but proud that I got an offer because I feel like it's really hard in the beginning. And I joined this startup that at the time was 7 people, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I could not have expected how much I would have learned that. I converted to full time in only 2 months, which was awesome. Like I was super proud of myself. It was my first job as a data scientist, and specifically in this company, they were very research intensive. So my team was basically a bunch of people with PhDs and backgrounds in stats and mathematics and brilliant, brilliant, brilliant people. And again, it's very easy to feel small. I think it's impressive to tell the story that, yeah, I came from nothing, no math background like you, Jesse, but working side by side with PhDs doing hardcore math, it's impressive. But I also like to share the bad side of it, which is uh, imposter syndrome. I think if you're not familiar with this term, it's like you don't feel like you're enough.
I totally had that whenever I joined a new job. Yeah.
Yeah, and people don't talk about it a lot, and I like to talk about it because it's not only not feeling enough, but it leaks from your professional side to your personal side. So during all this pretty story that I'm telling, I struggled a lot with depression, and again, very taboo topic.
Depression.
Yeah, depression, because working alone and feeling like you're not enough and being away from my family, from my friends, when you move to somewhere new, I think immigrants must see this a lot. You gotta rebuild your whole network. It's very lonely in the beginning, but if you continue doing it, it's like something that piles over time and you just get a better support group. Yeah. So anyways, just as a side note to end in a positive note, is that after tons of imposter syndrome, not believing I'm a data scientist at all, I think we are a little over 4 years over that. And I do believe I'm a really good data scientist. And I do believe that my background in business is what I can bring together, like data science and business, to really add value to any company that I work with. So
That's super touching. I am so glad that you shared your struggles around your imposter syndrome, because a lot of people, they do not talk about it. It's very natural for people to feel uh, like that when they join a new job, especially when people have the tendency to compare themselves with others who have more experiences, who have a more senior title, right? Like people they look up to. So that's great. So do you feel like you are no longer small, just like a Brazilian, now that you feel more powerful because you discovered the inner strength of yourself, right?
yeah, totally. I think that I can go more into details later, but about how I learned to embrace all the things that make me a Brazilian and also the things that make me a data scientist and an American and everything. I think like it's a matter of adopting all these identities and getting the best out of each instead of feeling the bad things about being a Brazilian in Silicon Valley. Like there's a lot of positives too.
Right. So, since we are talking about you from Brazil, can you talk about the cultural difference between Brazil and America? Is there anything particular in your culture actually helped to shape who you are today?
Ooh. I'm afraid to answer that one because there might be a lot of Brazilians watching. I don't want to represent my culture wrongly, but I feel like the defining trait is called jeitinho brasileiro, which means the Brazilian way. And it's hard to describe, but it's just like a very resourceful and creative and make sure you can make things with whatever resources you have and make it happen. Brazilian people are very positive. Yeah, positive. You're always like seeing the glass half full. and you make a way to work. A great example, it's silly, but I saw a Facebook video the other day on like the quarantine, everybody stuck at home, and this Brazilian guy's way to exercise is to go into his kitchen floor and throw like dish soap and water, holding the counter and pretend it's a treadmill. This is like the Brazilian way. But
I
in
love
general,
it.
let me think of other things. I think people are generally interested in like getting to know each other as persons before jumping into business. So a lot of the meetings that you join is like talking about the personal life, asking about your family, which could be seen as like not focused or time efficient like in the US meeting culture. And again, I think there's good sides of both. I do appreciate when my time is respected and a 30 minutes meeting is effective as a 30 minutes meeting. But I do miss like getting to know people in a deeper level. Um, Brazil has 2 hour lunches during the day, which
Two
is
hours?
much better than, yeah, depending on the company, of course, but at least an hour. And I think that's much better to appreciate food and go outside versus in the US, a lot of people just bring their lunches to their table and eat as you continue to work. So there's not like a lot of this break.
See, that 2 hours long lunch can also be a relation building opportunity, right, with your colleagues.
Yeah, yeah. Like when in college, I used to take this 2 hour lunch and like go to the mall with my friends. You have so much time, you can do stuff. It's like the mini weekend in the middle.
Yeah.
In Brazil, also people, it's not as common as in the US to talk about your failures. And I feel like if you fail there, it might take a really long time to recover. And I really appreciate this that in the US, people really embrace failure as part of an iteration process of getting better. It's just a way to learn more and get closer to your goals. And it's encouraged to fail because if you fail, you're going towards something and you're learning something from it. But yeah, just to wrap up, I think the difference of cultures between Brazil and US, in my view, again, I could be completely wrong. Don't leave me for it. But I think the moral of the story here is that it's just important to understand your culture and also the culture they are inserted in because you need to play both games. And I think I'm very lucky to be somewhere right now that it's a very multicultural environment. And if you are in an environment like that, people are more aware of the differences and they also are more aware of how they can enhance each other. So,
Right. Yeah, totally. It sounds like you kept the great culture from being a Brazilian, being super positive, right? Like when you felt to get the first job in the beginning, like over 200 times, you just kept on going, kept trying, never give up, and eventually you got to where you are today, right? And then having really great soft skills, like knowing how to build relationship with the people, that's also super great. Okay, to move on, let's talk about maybe some of the language challenges you have faced in your job.
oh, okay. Um, I feel like I don't think I make that many English mistakes, but every day I learn that I still do. Either through my wife, I think like my wife corrects me more often than my colleagues, maybe because they don't feel as comfortable. But what I try to do to make sure that I'm learning about English as well constantly, because I'm not the type of person that's gonna take a formal lesson on English at this point in life, but I do think that I still have points that I can improve. So I try to always share my work as often as possible with my team, so they can tell me if there are mistakes. Uh, Honestly, I think it's building your uh, endurance to continue making mistakes in public and not being afraid of them. I think in the beginning I was very embarrassed. I wouldn't want to walk. I didn't want to even talk to like cashiers to order food because I get like so anxious that they're gonna ask me something fast and I'm not gonna understand and I'm not gonna reply fast enough. So I'd always get my wife to order food and I need to call somebody to fix something. My wife's gonna do it. Like I don't want to be involved. But now I continue forcing myself, and especially in a work environment, I feel like it's okay to accept that I'm not a native speaker and I might not ever be. So I try to show vulnerability. Like I ask for help. I ask my friends that are native English speaker, like, hey, can you check this or can you help me? How to what's the like this phrase seems weird in English because I wrote with a very Portuguese word placement. So I ask for help, like how can I communicate this better? And then I learn over time.
do you feel like your colleagues, whenever you ask them for help, do they always like accept, like do they always offer to help, or do you find that eventually they will get annoyed, like, why did you ask me again? I'm not a content person. Have you ever
I think
encountered situations like that?
luckily I haven't, but I see it's totally possible. I think it's a matter of you to knowing when to ask. It depends a lot of the culture where you work or the people around you are. But in the culture that I am right now, people are very accepting of
Mm.
everything like this. So I feel very um, confident in asking for help, and they're never gonna be annoyed. And also, of course, I'm not gonna ask them the same question all the time. And they rather me to ask questions than struggle alone, which is super nice. I really appreciate that about my colleagues and my friends, to be honest. Going a little bit off the career side, but yeah, they're super welcoming. And as long as I learn from the questions that I ask, they know that I'm not gonna ask them all the time. So
Right.
I never annoyed people. And if I did, let me know.
Yeah, this is great. So, another follow up question on this is, have you ever felt self conscious about your accent? When you speak in English, we both have accent, right? Like, because we are not native speakers. Is that something ever like bothering you when you do your job, like when you do presentations and things like that?
Hmm. Honestly, no. And let me explain it. uh, I think that again, it really helps to be in a multicultural environment. There's so many accents in my workspace, in the streets. Even if you talk to people like in a store, everybody is from everywhere in the world in San Francisco.
Right.
I feel like because of that, people don't tend to judge as much. Depending where you are, I'm sure you're gonna encounter a different situation. Um, but yeah, I just continue using my accent. Some people even think it's charming, so might as well imagine everything. Everybody thinks it's charming.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. I'm glad you don't feel self conscious about it. I know a lot of people do, a lot of immigrants do. Myself, I've tried over the years, I kind of overcame this challenge already. I just don't care as much. But in the beginning, like during the first few years, definitely that was, made me not
Interesting.
even want to talk in public. Like when I went to a meetup, like I wouldn't want to talk unless people ask me about things.
Ooh,
Um,
can we swap hats really quick then? And can I ask you a question?
sure.
Yeah, can you just tell about that? Like, how did you overcome it? Because that's super interesting.
Yeah. Well, okay. First of all, I don't want to sidetrack this conversation, so I'm just gonna provide super quick answers to that.
Okay.
I, I, I started to force myself to ask questions, right? Like if I didn't understand any jokes or any slang words, I will just go ask people. Be very
Mm.
uh, thick skinned. Like don't feel shy. Don't feel like you're embarrassing yourself for asking questions. And the other thing I did was to listen to podcasts and listen to how other people talk, how native speakers talk, and pick up accents from those people. And gradually, the more I talk, the more I can feel comfortable about accepting my accent. This is like something you do over years. Eventually, you got used to it, and then you just don't care anymore, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So you, I think you also done a really good job handling all the challenges. There are many immigrants out there who actually are struggling with their identity and who might need professional advice to help build up confidence. Do you have any advice for those fellow immigrants?
Hmm. I think one thing that really strike me through. See, this could be bad English. Stroke me through. I don't know. Anyways, during I become a U.S. citizen last year, and
Oh,
during the
congrats!
citizenship, thank you. Yeah, during the citizenship ceremony, which was beautiful, there were people from like over 180 countries, and it was really cool. And the keynote speaker, they said something that was really beautiful to me, that you don't just become an American, you become an American and in my case, is an American and a Brazilian. and a Latino, and anything that I can associate with, I'm never gonna not be who I was because I am here now. And I think it's something that it's easy to say, but honestly, it took me 5 years to start believing this. Like during the immigration process, you really don't know who you are because you are in the limbo, like you're in the middle of things. It's kind of like the trapeze thing again. But yeah, I think embracing your multiple identities, it's okay. You never need to leave your roots to be here or wherever you are. I think it's just like understanding the best parts of your identity and that you are not like this binary thing. You're multifaceted, or data science term in this hyperplane of possibilities. I'm just kidding. Um, so I think in terms of other advice, just always spend time creating or fostering your support groups. And
Which is
first,
super
like I was
important.
telling, yeah, when I first moved here, it was very lonely, especially because I was working from home. I had nobody to talk except my wife, and it can get really hard. So you need to like make friends, go to activities, work in an office really helps. Not possible right now with the quarantine, but doing lots of Zoom calls. And it's interesting because I've been here for almost 6 years and I've become much closer to my family. So that's like a great support group that when we're all living in the same house, our culture was a lot, each one goes to your room, close the door, and we would barely talk sometimes. Now it's very important to talk to them. And I value this more being far away, which is kind of funny, too late to realize. But yeah, I think the support group really matters. And the final thing is I think your story is what makes you unique. So instead of always thinking you're an outsider, like I did in the beginning, like, oh, I'm just a Brazilian, I think you just need to use that, learn to use that because it's a process as an advantage to stand out. So now it's easy for me to tell about all the good cultural Brazilian traits because I embrace them and I think they are part of me, just like the American traits are part of me, and etc.
This is super great advice for all the fellow immigrants out there. I have one last question. However, before I ask my final question, I have a quick message to the audience. So if you have any questions for Paulo, please leave a comment. We will take a look at the questions in the end. Does that sound good?
Yeah. I'm excited. Bring it on.
Okay, super. My last question is, what advice do you have for immigrants who might be interested in becoming a data scientist?
Interesting. Um, I guess first talk to other data scientists. I think it's great to read online about the field. There's so much content online about what data science is and what it's not and how it's applied and the best practices. But it's much easier if you talk to somebody who is data scientist because then you're gonna get a perspective on them about what it is. Like learn how they got there, learn why they like it, ask about their routine, why they don't like it. And that gives you a lot of clues if you're gonna like it or not. Again, I feel like any job has so much variation, and it helps if you understand about what you want in your life, your professional aspirations, your career goals, and that's gonna help you discover how to get there as you talk to other data scientists. So in my case specifically, like I shared, I wanted to prioritize very fast getting my feet into the field to see if I would like it because I learn things by practice. Like I can only see if I'm not gonna like it or if I will like it once I'm doing it. And the bootcamp for me was the faster way to do that. The bootcamp was 4 months, took me another 5 to 6 months to get my first offer. So it's not that fast. I thought it would be like a magic thing that you go and end up with a job. It's not like that. It was just the beginning. But it gave me enough proficiency as like a level 0 data scientist to at least continue my path, to continue learning over the past 4 or 5 years, studying deeply on my own. So in terms of advice, just try it. You never know what the people behind like a job application are looking for. So if you apply a lot and you continue iterating and learning from your mistakes in each interview, you're gonna land it. And you could be lucky and be that in your first month. It could take a little more, but you're gonna learn a lot about yourself in the process. And always like be upfront and transparent when you talk to anybody. So if I'm going to interview a data scientist, I wouldn't like just connect on LinkedIn. I would share like what I want to learn from them. and share my career aspirations on how I think they might be able to help me. And then if I even know, I can offer how I can help them if there is something that I can do for them.
That's super great advice you have. This is so great. Thanks so much for all the wonderful insight and advice you shared today. I am super glad we got this opportunity to chat about your career stories. And to wrap up, let's take a look and see if there are any questions from the audience. Let me take a quick look.
While you take a look, I just want to give one more advice that I remember.
Yeah.
Don't follow my steps.
What do you mean, don't follow your steps?
I think it's really, I love watching inspirational stories, and this gives me a lot of knowledge about how people got there, what they did and what they didn't. But I feel like I was doing this wrong when I first moved here, when I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I would read about Elon Musk and all these great entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, and I was like, oh, cool, this guy only sleeps 5 hours a day, so I gotta sleep 5 hours a day. And I was trying to follow all these successful people routines and how they got there without realizing that it's not a copy paste. Like, you gotta hear about how a lot of people did it to learn from their mistakes, but the way you're gonna do about your life, it's gonna be unique to you. So that's why I say, never follow my steps or anybody's steps. You gotta hear their story, but make your own.
Right.
Carve your own steps.
Oh, okay. So we do have a question from an audience. This person, his name is Raphael. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. He says, Paulo, do you feel like you have a responsibility in representing Brazil and creating an identity there? Well, this is the one thing you talked about in the beginning, right? Like you already said, oh, I'm not representing Brazil because there are a lot of Brazilians watching, but this is just my way of sharing my personal growth and in hope that I can help other immigrants to overcome their struggles as an immigrant, right? But if you have anything to add, please feel free.
Yeah, I feel like it's a very noble mission to be representing your country, but it can be overwhelming to feel like you're carrying this heavy weight that you must represent every single Brazilian, which is I don't know, 300 million people. It's impossible. I cannot carry that weight to represent Brazil, and I honestly wouldn't even try. But with that said, I do feel that I have a responsibility to help my country in general, and this might take different shapes. For example, when I decided to become a data scientist, data science field in Brazil is not as developed as the US, and it's very peculiar because it focuses in different areas. But I do feel that I can help these people, just like when I was helping the entrepreneur side. I can help, and since I love this whole mentorship philosophy, I'm always mentoring people in Brazil. I did a 1 week intensive data science course in Brazil 2 or 3 years ago. I was still new in the field, but I feel like I was able to bring so much knowledge there and add so much value. So I do feel this slight responsibility as a mentor, but never, never, never want to be I'm representing the whole country, because I think that's impossible.
Yeah, totally. And then the purpose of this interview, just to clarify, is not necessarily about, hey, I'm inviting a Brazilian to representing the country. We're talking about career growth and personal growth and how you went through your journey to become a successful data scientist today, right? And yeah, and then we actually have another question. It's a private question. It says, what would you have done differently if you were given a chance to restart your immigration life?
Ooh. If I had the money, maybe I would use a lawyer for immigration. We did the process by ourselves, and it was very tiring. But honestly, I don't think I would have done much things differently, because it's impossible to know what you're gonna expect by switching careers and moving across the globe. I think there's so many unknowns that it's hard to reflect on what I would have done differently. But yeah, I think you just need to start small, like do something, find your goal for the next month or for the next day even, and continue doing it and learning from it, because that's the best way to continue. Yeah, so that's why I'm not gonna say I regretted anything, because I had the best information at the time at each step, and that's the best we can do.
Yep. Okay. Looks like we don't have other questions at this moment. So I guess we can wrap up unless you have anything else to add.
Oh, just thank you very much for the invite. I'm super excited to see this page developing and being able to help all the immigrants and all the people in general that want to transition careers or be in Silicon Valley or not. I think sharing the stories is the best way to do it and create this like network of support. We're eventually gonna become a group here, which is super exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm hoping we can bring more fellow immigrants together to create this community where we can help each other to succeed in many different fields. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for taking your time to chat. I hope we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was super exciting.
And if you are open to share your LinkedIn profile with the audience, I can leave a link in the comment later, but just let me know.
Oh, for sure. And if anybody else has questions later, I'm super happy. Like, reach out to me or Jesse. We're there for you.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much, Paulo. Have a great Sunday.
You too. Happy Sunday.
Bye. Bye, everyone.